Hey guys, it's Amy from Artful Artsy Amy, and I'm going to talk to you today about how you can make a 3D printed cameo pendant using faces of your students. And when I say you, I mean how you can teach your students how to do this. My goal would be to make this so that a student as young as second grade could do it, but you know your students and you know their capabilities. So as you can see, we have two pathways here. One is our silhouette, and one we're going to call our frontal portrait. So I'm going to show you how to do both, and we're going to start with preparing our image. Both of these start with a photograph of a student, and I'm going to show you how to get started. So you want to start with photos of your students. I'm going to start with the silhouette first. If you're going to do the silhouette pendant, you want to take a profile picture of every student against a neutral background or a solid background. So that background could be a green screen, it could be a green piece of butcher paper, it could be a white wall, it could be a black wall. You do need to pay attention though to the contrast between your students' faces and whatever it is you put behind them. You want it to be a high contrast. So I have a little sample silhouette image I'm going to go find right now. So I have this student right here. And as you can see, this was taken on a white background. So I'm going to double click on my padlock to get rid of that. And then I just want to get rid of this background. The easiest way is to grab my magic wand tool. This of course is my tolerance. The larger the number, the more of a color it will pick up. So I'm just going to use it there and go edit, edit, cut, edit, cut. That checkerboard means I've gotten rid of the background. If it was me, I would go ahead and crop this down just so I don't have anything extra that I don't need, okay? And now I want to mess with the hue and saturation. So I'm going to go to adjustment, I'm going to go to hue and saturation, and I want to take all of the color out. So I'm going to turn it into a black and white. And now I'm going to get rid of all the lightness. And as I do that, you see I get a wonderful silhouette. So I click OK. Now I'm ready to save it. I'm going to go File, Save, and you want to give it a student name. So why don't we call this student Jose? And you want to save it as a PNG file. So I'm going to choose PNG, and I'm going to put sample after that so later I'm not wondering who Jose is. Jose sample. Okay, and then I want to save it somewhere on my computer where I know it will be. Save. Okay, so the next step is that we would want to put this into our program to tell it how to do something 3D. The problem is our program doesn't like PNG files very much, but there wasn't an option to save it in a file it likes. It really likes SVG files. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert this PNG to an SVG file. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. You know I'm all about the free, so this website right here, PNG to SVG, will convert our file for us. So we're going to choose our file. So where's my Jose sample? There it is. And I'm going to click Open. Okay, so it's right there. I'm going to scroll down, and then I just click on Generate, and I have to wait a second. Okay, and now it has translated this into an SVG file. You click download SVG, it automatically is going to go to your downloads folder, and it's going to save it as like SVG to PNG. So you might want to tell your students to go back in and change that file name. So I just click there, download SVG. You could kind of see it just went right down there, and I can show you really quick that it just went to my downloads. If I click here and I go to my downloads, it saved it right here as image to vector 1. Okay, so that's how you, I apologize, had a weird little blurb there. That's how you get your silhouette image ready to turn it into a 3D image. But what if I want to do a full frontal portrait? How do we do that? Okay, so we go back to Pixlr, and we're going to open an image from a computer, and you want to go find an image you like. So here's an image, and you want to isolate it down to the face. So I'm going to take my crop tool, get this isolated down, and I want to get rid of this background. Now that's where I was telling you it's going to be helpful to take pictures on a neutral background. If you don't have it on a neutral background, it's a lot more work for your students. I've selected the color. I'm going to get the paint bucket tool, and I can click there, but you can see it starts to get some of this person's face, so I can always turn that number down. There we go. And let's try it again with the number turned down. See, a little bit better, right? And I would keep doing this until I get the background all solidified up, okay? Whoops, we're gonna pretend like that looks really good. Once I get the background all solid up, I click Magic Wand tool, Control X, and I get rid of the background. Okay, I'm gonna show you when I spent a little bit of time editing the background away on. So as you can see, I edited the background here. I added this oval around it. I found out later you really don't need that. I also translated it into black and white. You also don't need to do that either. But this one is now ready for the next step, okay? Now here's the thing with this little guy. You want to save this one as a JPEG, not a PNG, but a JPEG. So I'm going to click right here. We'll call this Jose 2 sample. Okay. I always like to make the quality 100 because I'm doing my best work. And save. Okay, so now I have to tell the computer how am I going to take this image and turn it into something I can do 3D design with. Well, there's a great little program online. It's called embossify.com. It's totally free. And you select your JPEG file. So I'm going to go select Jose 2 sample. Okay, there he is. And you're going to say, how wide do you want it to be? Well, 120 millimeters is actually quite a bit of size. So I'm going to say I only want it to be 40 millimeters. And I want the thicker material to be lighter and the darker material to be thinner. So I'm going to keep it right like that. I'm going to click on Embossify. And it's embossifying, so I have to wait. And then it gives me two options. I can do high resolution and pay $5. I'm all about free, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to choose low resolution, and once again it's going to automatically download for you. It gives it this long random number, so you might want to tell your students to go back in and rename that file. But now you have two different images that are totally ready to turn into a 3D design. Okay, so here's a great program to 3D design with, especially when you're first getting started. It's called Tinkercad, tinkercad.com. It's totally free. You do have to create a login, so that might be a hurdle depending on what the rules are for your district. But we're going to create a new design. Now, here's something kind of awesome about Tinkercad. You could create a template and then you could share that template with all of your students. Because what we're going to do is we're going to design the empty pendant. So we're going to design the actual piece that we're going to put our face onto. So if you think that designing that piece is going to be too difficult for your students initially, you could design it for them and then share that file with them. I actually really like having them design the pendant because there's a lot of math to it. You have to know how big, how wide, how tall, and I like that that puts mathematics, especially the mathematics of measurement, into a real world situation for students, but that is your call. So you're going to click on Create New Design. Okay, this is your work plane in Tinkercad, and there's sometimes it'll go black, just don't panic. It does that a lot to me. They have a new version out, so it's doing things. It just automatically gives it a weird name. So I'm going to call this my sample Jose pendant. Okay. This is your work plane, and it tells you the top, front. I can click on these things. Now I'm looking at it from the top. I can click here. Now I'm looking at it from the front, right? Oop, went black again. Again, no big deal, just does that. If I right click on my mouse, I can move it wherever I want, which is super helpful, okay? Then you have all these shapes that you can drag over. This makes it so easy, okay? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to drag out a cylinder. So here's our cylinder, and we want the dimensions of our cylinder to be 40 by 35 by 3 tall. This is all millimeters, okay? So let's see here. Let's do, I know 40, so let's go all the way up to 22. Oh, you know, do you see something, how that number isn't getting bigger and I want it to? Do you know what I was doing? I was probably making it taller. That does happen. Okay, so let's try it now. 29, 30, 35. It's feeling really, really big, isn't it? All right, so now we have it 40 by 35, as you can see, and I can right click and I can kind of see, well, it's still a little too thick. So if I click here, this arrow is going to move the actual whole object up and down, which is not what I want to have happen. I want to make the height. So I'm going to take that down, like I said, to 3 millimeters, which is not very thick. So you can see it's very, very little, right? Okay. So now I'm going to tell you the next step. So next we would like to have another little shape up here that our string or cord, whatever we're going to hang our pendant from, can go on. So we're going to grab another cylinder. And for this cylinder, we want the dimensions to be 10 by 10 by 3, which is pretty small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to zoom in, okay? Whoops. Okay. So since it's going to be 10 by 10, that's equal. If I hold down the shift button and touch one of these, I can just kind of continue to keep the dimensions. So 10 by 10, okay, that's good. And now I want it to be 4. I always like to sort of move it so I can see what I'm doing. Oops. There we are, by 4. Oop, no, I'm sorry, I apologize, by 3. Look at me getting my numbers off. Now your numbers don't have to be exactly the same because this is just the top of our pendant. So as you can see, I got a little bit off there. So I'm going to fix that. Okay. I'm bringing it over here and I can see it's still a little bit too tall, so I must have it at 4 and not 3. Boop, 3, okay? And this automatically saves for you, by the way, if you're wondering why haven't I saved yet. Okay, so here's my pendant. Now I need to create a little hole right there. Okay, but before I do this, right now, Tinkercad sees these as 2 distinct objects. So if I were to put a hole in something, it might only put it here, but what if I also want it to go through this little part? Okay, so you want to group them together. So what you do is you just sort of click and drag and draw a little square. See how it highlights everything? Right here I'm going to group. And I wait a second, it takes a second to think. Do you see how I grouped it all together? If I want to undo that, I can click right here to ungroup. But I like the group, okay? So now I need a little hole to go right there. I'm going to grab my cylinder tool, but do you see how this one's shaded? That means it's a hole. So I'm going to make a hole, and I want my hole to be 5 by 5 by 4. So same thing, I'm going to click right here. 9, 6, 5, look how tiny it is. I'm going to put it right over here and kind of center it as best I can. Okay, there we go. All right, and I make sure it's a little bit tall. Okay, that looks good. And so now I'm going to group all of this together so I'll have a pendant with a hole in it. All right, so this could be it. You could put your faces right on this right now. I liked to make a little edge, so you can definitely do that if you'd like. So this is fine. If you want to get a little bit fancy, and I do like to get a little bit fancy, I'm going to show you the next thing. So right now, everything that I add would just go right on top. So what I could do is I can add a work plane, and now I can build right on top of my pendant. So I can add another cylinder and I could add all the fancy designs that I want to add if I would like to. Okay, so for this one I'm going to add just like another little shape really quick, and I'm going to do that and then I'll show you the results. Okay, so I just made a little bevel around the edge, not something you have to do. So I'm going to show you 2 different methods to do this pendant. So I need 2 of these. So this is my new favorite trick. I click on my shape and I push Control D. Oops, excuse me. Control D, sorry, and it duplicates it for me. All right, so now I have 2 of them. All right, that's a really cool trick. You don't have to do that. So I'm going to delete one. All right, what I'm going to show you right now is let's put the silhouette on there, right? So I'm going to go to Import. I'm going to choose File, and remember, I went to my downloads. So here's my image to vector. Look, there it is, and it's telling me how big it is. That's kind of big for what I want, so I'm going to say 40. When I click over here, it's going to automatically fix it for me, and I'm going to click Import, and I'll wait a second. All right, so here's my image, and all I can do now is I just resize it, and I put it in there exactly where I want, so I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, here's my first pendant. As you can see, it's right in there, and so what I would do now if I want to print it is I click Export, and I click on STL, and that would download it as a file I can now 3D print. So let me show you how to do the full frontal print. Same thing, you're going to click on Import, but this time you're going to have to go find that file that you embossified and open it, and click Import. Might take it a second. Okay, so here's my full frontal portrait. Whoop, I made it too big. There we go, sorry about that. So I would click here, and I'm going to drag it over here and get it to wherever I like, and I can change the size on it, whatever I would like. Actually, the size looks pretty good. I always like to right click and see how it looks from different angles. And then the same thing, I export, I click STL, and I save it to my folder. So that's the deal, guys. That is how you 3D print these pendants. I'll show you what the finished product looks like again. So right here, I really hope that you consider doing it. And if you do, let me know how they turn out. Thanks so much.